This is episode 112 of the Change Physician Podcast. I'm Melissa Cady, the Challenge Doctor, with my awesome co-host, Dr. Kevin Cuccaro. And here at the Change Physician, we wanted to talk about in this episode I think it's a prevailing topic. We just don't always put it into words, but it is a happy talent to know how to play is a actual quote that I came across. So this is the topic today, and it's all about play. And of course, Ralph Waldo Emerson said this quote, and there's a couple of other quotes that we have come across exploring this topic a little bit more in detail. But I think we're going to play with it. Kevin, how about that?
Sounds good. Play is the topic.
Yes. Well, I do want to mention there was another quote from George Bernard Shaw, and I wanted to mention it because it's worth restating. We don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So what do you think about those two quotes, or where do you want to start with that in light of the fact that we probably should define playing?
Yeah, so the first one, it is a happy talent to know how to play. So what is that kind of telling us on, or when you sort of dissect that out, what does that mean? And to me, what this is strongly inferring is that if you understand and you've engaged in play and you've incorporated that in your life, that it will almost becomes more fulfilling. Like it will almost become the sort of virtuous cycle of I understand the play, I understand the importance of play, and now it becomes self-reinforcing and provides me joy.
Right.
The other one, the George Bernard Shaw quote, which is, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing, is almost like the opposite side of that. Because now it's not the fact that if we're losing the capacity to play, that's when we start getting more rigid. We start losing both cognitive and physical flexibility, and we start losing joy in day-to-day interactions. So to me, it's the negative side of not play. We have, right. So with the positive side is telling us, well, if you've incorporated daily play, or not daily play, although hopefully maybe daily play, you've incorporated and understand, and you've practiced the skill of play, that will promote joy. But if you haven't learned and you're not pursuing this to incorporate play, maybe you've lost it since you were a child, the negative associated with that is that you're more likely to do the cycle of burnout, where now you're going to lose interaction, you're going to lose interest, you're going to have less motivation to pursue things. Your brain is going to be less flexible, and we'll talk about that in a second why. Physically, you start doing activities that you like running and jumping and things. So now your bones and joints start to either atrophy or to tighten up. So we lose that degree of flexibility. So they are very much favorable to each other. One's on the pros and one's sort of on the negatives of not playing.
Yeah. Well, and everything you just said, which I like hearing your perspective on it, and it just kept making me think about how everything that we start doing in medicine is progressing us into this intensity and seriousness. And I would definitely say intensity, and it puts a lot of expectations and pressures on an individual. And so because of many of the personality types, and this is kind of a stereotype, but more of the type A and more of intense and wanting to do a really good job, and a lot of personal expectations on oneself, or possibly from the external, but you may tend to focus only on that work and nothing else. And you start basically crowding out play for the sake of wanting to make sure that you're doing everything perfectly or get as high a score as possible, or even just survive, and the amount of dedication and time too. So you can see how you were saying how that cycle of knowing the benefits of play, if it's well ingrained within you and you carry that through training, that's great. But I would personally feel that most medical students do not incorporate that over time in training and especially into clinical practice, because the amount of pressure on yourself to just survive or make a living, or the amount of patients you have to cover. I just think the amount of responsibility put on an individual, it's not surprising that we as physicians are setting ourselves up for burnout because we're not incorporating play and maintaining that throughout our career. And maybe just it's really hard to in light of the time demands. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think well, first let's do a little bit definition of what play is, and this is the reason I think is important, is because we have to have some sort of structured agreement on what play means in order for us to have the discussion about it. So I like this one sentence sort of summary, that play is a range of intrinsically motivated activities done for recreational pleasure and enjoyment. Now, then you have to break it down. What does recreational mean? And recreation then is leisure or leisure activities, things that you do simply because you really want to do them. And taking that with your thoughts on how medical training in many ways kind of interrupts the flow of play and makes us, I don't like the way these makes us, but it can lead to a loss of joy and intrinsic motivation, is because of that extrinsic demand. Mm-hmm. So you go into medical school and you start residency, and if you're doing fellowship and then you're doing practice, we have all these extrinsic demands on us. And those extrinsic demands, unless you have carved out your intrinsic motivators, will overcome you. Mm-hmm. And personally, this topic is huge to me, because I know, just like probably most of the people who are listening to this occurred to me. Mm-hmm. And I have said for about a decade now, is I lost my hobbies in medical school. And it sounds kind of silly, and it may sound not serious at all, but it actually is still a mild distressor for me. There were things that I did before I started medicine. I was a whitewater kayaker. I used to go out and fish and hike, did a lot of outdoor activities. We moved to an area of the country that didn't have the geography that was favorable to those things. I didn't find anything else that replaced them for me. And because I didn't take that active moment, all this extrinsic came in. Now it just became school, married, kids, all that other stuff. But you lose it all. And at some point you start going, well, what am I, we have a practice environment, we have all these extrinsic reasons to do the things that we want to do. Then the burnouts may start setting when there's you don't feel the value anymore. And there's a lot of reasons, and we've talked about that on multiple episodes in podcasts, of how the healthcare system, which is more the sick care system, kind of pulls away from the ideas that we went into it for. Mm-hmm. And then you start seeking, well, what else is there? And if you've lost that, if you stop practicing play, and you're not having those intrinsically motivating activities that you're doing that provide joy simply because you are doing them, now one of the little kind of escape valves that we have to protect from burnout is gone. And so, and then you have to actually find that. So that's what I think that means to me, is it's the difference between these extrinsic pressures, stressors, whatever, that will crowd out these things unless we've carved or actively maintained those intrinsic factors that allow us to find joy in day-to-day activities.
Right. No, I think in speaking about the intrinsic, why is it that, speaking of these two quotes and talking about, play and when you're young and how it just comes naturally, and it's been structured into many kids' lives that, that they get to enjoy the benefits and the pleasures of play. I think it's worth noting, maybe I have a little list here of some of the things that we've come across, that it increases, creativity and increases brain function, decreases your stress levels, can increase, especially in an environment where you're around other people playing and everyone's having a good time. It increases your connections. You probably could look at the research on, oxytocin and all these good feeling chemicals when we improve our relationships with people. Overall energy increases, and whether it's a physical play or even just, being if you get outside your own self and actually expand your, I think people are more open when you're playing with other people. I think it's some of the biggest bridges in this world too, is playing sports. People from all different types of cultures and backgrounds. When you're playing and you have a sense of camaraderie and you build connections, you have a better understanding of people that are different than you, more openness to, if you're having a good time, it's a little bit easier to try to understand other people's situations too. And just overall, your social skills can increase when you're playing, and it takes the pressure off. It's not like you have this one-on-one discussion only, and it's, it's just, you're having a good time. You naturally can improve your skills. So I think that's just kind of a short little list of some of these benefits. But when you think of, even on a physical level, it seems like it's a tangent, but when there's a lot of intensity and rigidity, even in our physical activity, there's times where you need a little bit of rest from a physical for recovery. But even from a cognitive level, intensity and especially as physicians, there's a lot of responsibility, and you're trying to just take care of, it's just a little more serious many times when you're taking care of people's health and worried about their lives in your hands sometimes, especially as anesthesiologists. Having a little bit of downtime where that's not the constant focus, I think enables some recovery time and a little bit of decrease your risk of burnout too. Just look at the COVID era of people that are taking care of intensely sick people. And if they don't get a break, it's not good for our overall wellness. So any thoughts on some of those key benefits of what play can do?
Yeah, no, I think that makes it addresses both sides of the coin, right? Yeah. So that the happiness quotient with happy is he who knows how to play, right? So yeah. That's is kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, or at least self-fulfilling element to it, that if you incorporate play into your day, you're more likely to enjoy your day. Mm-hmm. And then you hit the part about learning, relaxation, recovery, and flexibility that are associated with play as a almost de-stressor. So it may be increasing, because we're not going to ever say that play in and of itself does not have a stress component to it, but it's more of the eustress, the challenge base. So if you're in a sports realm, there is a stress associated with it. You're going to have a sympathetic response, but the difference is if you're hopefully doing it in a way that you're not so intense that it's negative. Yes. That is more of that challenge focus, which has a different physiology behind it. But I think, and then if you add that into the George Bernard Shaw part about growing old and how lack of play is, that makes sense from both the physical side, like you said, where now if we're not increasing some sort of functional movement and we're doing things that the body's not necessarily used to doing all the time, repetitive, we're not challenging those muscles, ligaments, et cetera, promoting them to change. And on the cognitive side, it's the same thing. If you are not doing something stimulating or something enjoyable to your brain, your brain's going to atrophy and kind of solidify the same way that the body does. So, it's so important. And the more I look at it, the more I'm like, it's a little bit of a stressor for me again, because is the hobbies, I just don't have the same hobbies that I did before medicine. Yeah. So let's talk about, I want to move into, as we've already talked about what, the importance of play, kind of this concept of this intrinsically motivated versus extrinsically motivating. It's something you do for the action itself to provide joy. We've talked a little bit about the importance of it. So how do you incorporate play? How to encourage it in your day-to-day life, Dr. Katie?
Yeah. Well, I married the best example of play. So
married play.
I literally was blessed to meet someone who is intrinsically driven to enjoy every moment, and probably at the cost of losing his parents early in life, that he doesn't take those things for granted. And so I think his personality combined with his experience in his youth has made, and I think he's reinforced it. It's a habit, and he's one for habits. So that habit is stuck, and which is good for me, because like many of us as humans, whoever you're associated with, you cannot help but be impacted by their behavior, unless you decide to stay away from it and they're no longer around you. But there will be something you pick up subconsciously, consciously. And so who you surround yourself with, I definitely feel like I probably had a little bit more of a serious upbringing, not in a bad way, just wasn't as like no prankster
Playful?
stuff. No,
It wasn't as playful.
it wasn't as playful. I mean, it's not that there weren't jokes, like, it could be corny jokes said and stuff, and you can laugh at that, but I remember that part. But I would say that I've been around, you'll be around different types of families growing up, and you're like, wow, these people are like joking all the time. Some people are like, you wonder if they have a pulse. There's just different levels of that and energy. And so it's funny how people, when you think about it, I'm kind of a serious person at work. Sometimes I'll joke around and stuff, but I take my job seriously. And it's funny that people can be different at work than they are outside of work many times. But people at work might think, oh, well, Dr. Katie may not be the funnest person to be around, but unless you're, because I'm not sitting there, joking around all the time and connecting, because I'm just focused on my work. But it's, when you think about it, who do you want to be around? People that are playful, people that are fun, people that take you away from the mundane or the seriousness of the life that you're living or the drama that you're living. You want to escape it. And it's an escape. I mean, for a lot of people, play is an escape, but it's just a healthy habit to interrupt the seriousness of life and connect with others. But so as far as what I do, I'm very lucky and grateful that my husband is a good role model and tries to help me loosen up a little bit in life, and which is good. And I too have had the same problem with many of the things I enjoyed. I played a lot of sports. I converted it into doing some kind of like, those races and stuff, through early medical training and stuff. But and I love to go out dancing with friends, but somehow you just, your time gets consumed by other things. And so you push those things out. But exploring things that you are, I would say that exploring some things maybe that are hobbies that I hadn't done before, because I never had a mother that, did a lot of gardening or did anything like that. But I've recognized through the years that I'm in awe or have a curiosity. I guess that's probably the best word. I have a huge curiosity and find beauty in nature and the miracles of, if you just look at the variety of animals and I just have a love for nature, I guess. And I don't think I appreciated that in my earlier years. I didn't cognitively think that way, but I just played sports and had fun, whatever. I didn't think about it. But I'm much more consciously aware about how we're destroying our environment, and how I think just, our populations are getting so big that we are just utilizing so much of it. And so I think it's hard for me not to recognize these other things that I find amazing. And so I think I have more gratitude for the little finer things and simpler things. So for me to go out and explore and try out gardening, because things grow and they change and you're never at a loss for learning. So
that's your play is
yeah,
how you've incorporated is the gardening, because it was
yeah,
something new. Yeah.
I'll just go outside because I like to be outside in the sun. I know that, and then make something pretty or beautiful or watch something grow. I don't have children of my own, so I guess I see things grow in different ways. So yeah, it's exploring those things that they're connected with things that I know that I kind of liked, which was like getting outside. So it's just another thing outside.
So we can kind of distill that, I think, for the listeners. Yeah, we can distill that in the listeners is there's if you are getting challenged and or are you feeling frustrated about incorporating play, I think the one you hit on the head was environment. I mean, if you want to do something dramatic, is change your environment, right? So if you want to incorporate play in your life, get around playful people.
Yeah.
And you can do that by either joining a group maybe, or if you have somebody at work that seems to be playful things, try to get around that person.
Yeah.
We know from other evidence and support on many different things is that that environment that you in is going to significantly influence the behaviors that you initiate. We've seen that with weight loss. We've seen that with biases. But that's a whole different topic on there. So change your environment, get into a group of playful people is probably one of the best ways. And the other one, what you shifted to was again, more the self-awareness stat. It made me think of, well, if you're struggling with play now, look at the things that you were previously interested in. And if you can engage with those, great. But the other part that you said was what you're curious about, because if you weren't exposed to gardening and you're curious about growth and you're interested in learning, then the importance of curiosity as it comes to play, that's a whole nother episode.
Yeah.
But so so for the listeners here, and particularly for those, everything gets filtered through our personal experience. This for me is a very challenging topic, which some people listening to this may actually, what do you mean, Dr. Cuccaro? How could that be hard? It is very difficult for me to incorporate play because I lost so many of these things. And really is change your environment. And I still think that's probably the best, but if you're not able to do that or haven't made, for whatever reason, maybe that's too scary, was look at the things that you used to do, see if you can incorporate those now, things that you're curious about, and pursue them not for the end result, but simply the action of trying to indulge your curiosity. Would be the way that I would recommend for someone else, and is what I'm going to incorporate after this episode.
Yeah. And I think it's okay to be a little vulnerable if you trust somebody that is playful, and if you haven't engaged into a relationship that you've spent time in the right setting, it might be, I've been too serious in my life. You're so much fun. I just want to be around other people that are fun. So maybe I can be more fun. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there's, I don't know. I think there might be some people with the right person. I think you can share that.
Well, and I think that's kind of a key component to play, is the ability to do it in such a way that there is a lack or certainly a diminished sense of external judgment, that
Right.
you're doing it because you want to do it.
Right.
And there's you can almost incorporate some self-deprecation, like playful self-deprecation of, look how silly this is, me trying this thing, but I'm trying it. Maybe you're doing a new sport and you're tripping over your own feet, laugh rather than get all mad.
Yes.
And I think that's really crucial to keep it play rather than becoming a stressor, is to do it for the reasons that you want to do it, and then make sure that you're not escalating the seriousness of it. And this may come back to that sports complex, or that sports thing, because if you try to do sports as play, but then it becomes serious, and now there's this external factoring on I have to win, or I played horrible.
You can burn out on sports too.
Then it will no longer be play anymore. Now it becomes this extrinsically driven thing, and we lose the point. But anyway, I do think this is an incredibly important topic. I think it is much more important than I think most people will appreciate, because we have these external demands, and in some ways, I guess our own society doesn't encourage it in many ways. But for physicians and for those who have done heavy amounts of training, if you lost your play, we're going to get old quick, just like, we're going to get old and inflexible. And who wants to be old and inflexible?
Yeah. Well, let me just share with you that, my husband likes to play and give me cute little gifts that seem like they're for kids, but he calls me Wonder Woman. So there's one of my little playful gifts. And then he knows that I love, dancing, and I love little baby Groot. So
he can dance.
He needs a new battery right now, but he wiggles around and he's right near my desk. So, people may not agree with those kind of playful things, but that's just an example of, bringing people into your life that are fun and can add silliness to your life.
Yeah.
So.
And they may disagree, and it doesn't matter because it's not their play. They play their own way and you play yours.
That's
and
right.
I guess that goes for you guys out there too. So if you're playing, continue to practice that skill. It's important.
Yeah.
If you have found yourself that you've lost play, which is incredibly common as we get older, encourage you to develop those skills. Certainly to do so, you can either change your environment, get around playful people, probably the easiest, fastest way to that route. And if you're not around those people, be curious. What did you used to do that you enjoyed? What are things that you want to do that you would think about doing, and do them simply just to do them without any need for external validation?
That's right. Exactly. Well, and to take it another level, that can be extended into a community that likes the things that you've explored and were curious about, and there could be a shared interest, and that can make it for more fun as well. So
for more fun as well. And so I will end that episode here. If you want to join a community that hopefully soon will have some playful activities, you can join us at thechangedphysician.com, whether you're a physician or physician ally. We'd appreciate a playful review on any of your podcast directories, or here on the YouTube, if you like or subscribe at the YouTube channel. And until next time, stay well, folks.
take care.